I think most of you know pretty much what the reading group is, but just for anyone who doesn't, I mean, it's basically a chance just to talk about a few books that we've chosen because people have read them and said they're good, and then it's a chance to read them a bit more widely, or if not to have read the book, then to read a sample in English, or just to hear what people have to say. And the idea is that it's a chance also for books to become known in books that haven't yet been translated to become known, so that they can be picked up by publishers. And the books could be also, it could be something that we would end up wanting to translate at Other Stories or other publishers, and that's all good. There's plenty of space. From Other Stories side, we haven't yet published anything from Portuguese, but that's about to change. The first book is coming out in about a month's time. All Dogs Are Blue is a Brazilian book by Rodrigo de Souza Leal, which is quite brilliant. A lot of Brazilian writers were recommending it to myself, and I read it, and independently to Sophie Lewis, our editor in Rio, she ended up reading it and loving it, and so we realised we sort of had to publish it. I was curious whether you see that in the Lusophone African writing that you read, whether the writers are very concerned with their African identity or their Lusophone identity or their national identity, or is it a mixture, or is it not a big issue for them?
I think it's very hard to generalise, and it's very hard to generalise partly because this is not, even though I've translated some Lusophone African writing, this is not an area I'm expert in. I'm a reader only. But it's also hard to generalise because the range of writing coming from some of these countries is huge. The range of writing varies from generation to generation. Aguiluz is doing one thing, the writers who were a generation before him in Angola, so Pepe Pella, people like that, are doing very different things. The concerns are different, but also the concerns are different from writer to writer because Aguiluz is interested in the things he's interested in, and everyone else is interested in the things they're interested in. There are certain things which recur because if you're in a place, that place is somehow going to filter into your writing.
African storytelling, you have to imagine sitting around a campfire or a hearth, hearing these stories being told. And so he's trying to recreate that idea within the book and within an urban setting, which makes it frightfully complicated.
On the one hand, it's also very sort of direct in the telling of these things that happen to the kids, and I mean, it's not an experimental. It's not a difficult sort of.
No, once you get
story.
into it, it's a string of very simple tales. Sometimes with almost a very simple sort of point to them, good and bad and whatever. There's no linguistic sort of funny business going on. It's sort of written in a sort of proper narrative style, but yet the language is complex.
Yeah. Is there going to be any disagreement on this one though? Is there?
The way he tells the story I find really compelling. He draws you in from the first page. I didn't put it down. I mean, and I think that's what you should say about a good book. So, yeah, I loved it. And I mean, it was very accessible in a way that the others I didn't find at all. I mean, the language, I wasn't having to flip back to a glossary, and and like what we were saying just now, reading it as a translator, I would rank them the same, like in terms of my favorites, how easy I think it would be to translate them. Aguiluz, I think, would be so easy to translate. And sometimes translators talk about, they think about how they would translate the book as they're reading it. And I didn't do that with Aguiluz. I was just reading it. And I think maybe that could be a sign of maybe that's how good it is. If you're not looking at it as a translation challenge. You're not seeing how would I do that, and that's tricky. I was just reading it because it was so good. I wasn't stopping to think about how I'd translate it. So.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming. 6 months' time we'll have another Portuguese group. So, if you've got an idea of a book that you'd like to read for that, we haven't got anything particularly planned yet, I think. So yeah, let us know.